Welcome back to another episode of Nerding Out with Viktor. Today, I am going to do an episode about pen testing, which is something I wanted to do for quite some time. So when I had Ken Monroe on the show a few weeks ago, he introduced me to Warren Houghton, who will be with me today and do some pen testing exercises or speak about pen testing exercises at least. So welcome to the show, Warren.
Hey, how you doing, mate?
Good. So it's probably going to make its way into a two-part episode, I think, because we, in the pre-recording conversations, I think we have enough meat to do two episodes.
Yeah, I feel so. I do some other stuff other than pen testing that might make it into another episode.
Exactly, and we had some backlinks to Iceman, who was on the previous episode as well, which relate to that.
Regards to all the listeners and you, Vic.
Amazing. So what we're going to do today is basically walk through a theoretical exercise about how a pen test is structured. We actually, this past week, the company you work for, Pentest Partners, did a pen test for Screenlink. So we literally did that exercise ourselves a few weeks ago with you guys. And let's start there. Okay, so the scenario that I want to use today in this episode is you are asked to do a pen test, and you are, in most engagements, you're given kind of a hit list of what you are allowed to with some parameters, like you're allowed to do this, but you're not allowed to touch that, and so on, right? So let's start there. Like usually you're given either a domain name or IP address to hit, or and then you basically start from there, right?
Yeah. So in terms of pen testing, it's like you're hacking something legally, or you're allowed to hack it. So the first thing I'd want to do as a pen tester is make sure I'm hacking the right thing.
Right.
Confirm that, like you say, the domain name isn't out of scope. Make sure that if there's some big bad page that they really don't need to touch, make sure you don't go to that. It's all within the confines of
right. So the very first thing you do is actually get your paperwork in order.
Yeah, make sure you don't end up in jail. Is the first one, really.
Yes.
So that'd be the first thing, and then once day one hits, you just start firing your laser. Just see what sticks and see what there is. So it all depends on what you're testing, really. So what am I testing?
So let's assume you were exposed. You were like, it's some kind of SaaS company. I would imagine is your bread and butter normally for pen testing, right? So you would have some kind of web app. I would imagine that you're testing. So let's assume you're given a range of IP addresses and you have some corresponding domain names, and let's fire lasers. What's the first thing you do when you have these IP addresses?
So if it's a web app, you want to load the web app. And one of the main tools I like to use is Burp Suite. And what Burp Suite does is called a proxy. So whenever you go to a website in the back end, and the Burp Suite acts as sort of a middleman, so between your browser and the website, and Burp Suite will sit in the middle. And what Burp Suite will let you do is screw around with the traffic as it's going through and start firing lasers, bypassing any controls that the browser. So, for example, certain things like if you're setting a password and you go, right, I want to set my password, I want to use the word password for a stupid person, then your web app might stop you, be like, no, that's not allowed. That's a bad password. I'm going to stop.
Right.
But the server might allow it, and what's like client side rather than server side. So by setting it through Burp Suite instead of your browser, you'll bypass.
So you bypass all the JavaScript kind of validation.
You can bypass an awful lot of checks that are, all checks that are client side.
Right.
If you do it through Burp Suite, it's just a little bit more. It's all in quite. Basically, it's all in.
Right. So you start with Burp Suite, and then you basically log in, you record the sessions, and then you see what's going on behind the scenes, really.
That's it. Yeah, I think the first thing I'd like to do is understand, before I start breaking it, understand what it's doing when it's working.
Right.
Understand that website as well as I could. Understand what technology is being used, understand what parameters are being used, understand what cookies are being set for certain sessions.
Right.
how they're being and all that. And then I'll start testing very certain things that maybe feel.
So it's your spidey senses when you look through those sessions, you're like, my spidey sense says it's something in this area that feels funky.
Yeah, that's it. Some tools like start highlighting stuff and go,
right,
you need to look here. And Burp Suite does do that. And sometimes years in the industry go, I should probably look here. This looks a bit sniffy. You know,
and you mentioned password recovery and password setting is one of the first usual suspects.
Yeah, exactly. You want to make sure that when the client gives you a website, you want to make sure that if there's a client session, the people can make accounts on the brochure web, then those sort of accounts can be secured effectively. It's one of the things we do. Make sure you're allowed to say passwords that significant level. You're not limited to like 8 characters long. I've seen that on websites where like anything over 8 characters. What?
That's
your password. What's this?
Oh man, that's one of my pet peeves. Like when they do that, or they prevent people pasting in a password.
It's so infuriating because pasting in password. I want to use a key manager. I'm not typing that stuff. I don't want to know it.
Right, exactly.
It's defeats the point. So that would be stuff we would raise for like account management, and then there would.
Please tell it to all the UK banks.
Oh god, banks are getting better. It's taken the pen testing community a long time. Generally, they are getting some. So I'm just gonna leave. It at that. But yeah, then we want to test like session management, for example. Like if I, for example, upload a file and I don't know, I have like a little cache of files or something like that on my use for whatever reason. I don't even theoretically. And can I upload a file or make a change or do something that affect your account? So instead of like when you do like a post request and it goes blah 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 user value 2 or something, can I go user value 3 and it work? You know,
so breaking the confinement and the security barrier for that account.
That's it. It's like horizontal, like horizontal.
Right.
It's a like session.
Yeah.
That's websites, and you generally look at websites are a bit of a. There's lots. It's generally quite not dark in a bad way, but like dark because you don't see it. It's some kind.
Yeah, and like imagine this was like I don't know a large portion of the internet runs on WordPress, right? So running. Finding out what version of WordPress that's running is probably a key finding, right?
Absolutely. If you're running an old version of WordPress, vulnerable Z, or some plugins that haven't been updated, or running a dodgy site, then yeah, absolutely. I mean, WordPress, can't remember it by to the WordPress log on a website by doing WP log on.
Yeah.
I'm like, cool, right? You probably shouldn't have that exposed. Like, why does any Tom, Dick, and Harry need access to that log? That would be something that we would also find. And usually at the bottom of that page, it will also, like you say what version it is. Like, well, now I'm going to Google the hell out and see if.
Right.
Hopefully, it's not a live web app. We always try to clients not have us testing live, because if it goes down, that's a live website which can impact. But then hopefully they've got a UAT.
Right. And I mean, with the rise of, I'm thinking Cloudflare in particular, because I think they probably did more to the web application firewall space than anybody prior to that, right? So their WAF is actually pretty good, particularly for WordPress, right?
Yeah, it's not bad. They're not everything. Like WAF won't stop everything.
Right.
There was always going to be something like anything, like antivirus. You can always bypass antivirus. It just takes longer and longer and longer. But having a web application firewall, absolutely, and like it will, if you start bombarding stuff with endless amount of traffic because you're trying to test password 1, 2, password.
Yeah, like
A
brute
WAF will
forcing.
usually find that, or like if you send a malicious payload to go like script alert 1 script, or it will go probably a bad guy. You shouldn't
Yeah.
allow that, and it will stop that at the barrier before it gets.
Okay. So, pro tip then: make sure you have Cloudflare or the likes of in front of your WordPress site.
That's it. Vendor agnostic here.
Yeah.
Like, just have something protecting. Like,
Yeah.
it's like you wouldn't just not have a door in your house, right? Like, like it's like, well, if you can have it, and you might, you won't see it, but that's good.
Yeah.
You don't see it. I mean,
right. Yeah. All right. So, you poked at it now. You ran through Burp Suite. You saw some interesting stuff. Started poking at the password reset. You spider sentences as you browse through the website. That's kind of like your main thing there. Like, what else? Like, so the password reset is an obvious one. What else is like an upload set?
That's it. Depends on what you can do on the website. It all depends on what the website. Like, if you go to a website, it's just one page. Well, there's nothing to.
Right.
But if there's like some crazy file upload or some like rendering software in the background that like renders everything you upload, then happy days, let's go. Because you can start uploading stuff and see what happens. Like, if there's any AV checks on anything you upload, should be. Like,
well, it depends on the scenario to some extent, right?
It does. So, like, if it was a bank, for example, and you had to upload an invoice, whatever you wanted to upload, be checked by some person working at the bank. Go, yeah, this is legitimate, or like a picture of your passport or something.
Yeah,
you see that all the time. Who's to say I can't just embed a virus into that, and then it would be loaded within the bank's domain by somebody.
Right.
Now, we can all imagine how that can go badly.
Yeah.
In the right, there are a lot of buts and maybes there, like that attack. Quite hard, but you get the picture, right?
Yes.
So it's all about what the functionality is. If you can upload a file, can I upload a bad file? The thing I always say with everything, if it could go wrong, how bad could it?
Right.
If I can upload a file, what's the worst file I can upload? How about we stop that?
Yeah. And I mean, that opens a Pandora's box of attacks vectors in general, right? Because then you have both rootkits, you have like various types of it kind of is. Well, I guess we should also cover how you could get executables onto the actual server that's running this.
That's it. It's if you can upload a file, for example, and then you can browse to that file, right? You go, okay, you've uploaded test1.test, and then you can go website domain /test1. You'll load. What happens if I upload test1.html and bad HTML in it? Will it render that? Will it render that on the server? Can I just upload a shell and start typing in commands on the server that it will render on the server? Then you've got a terminal on the server, and that's not ideal, is it?
let's go down that path further, right? Because that's an interesting attack vector. Like, once you can actually start executing commands on the server, that's scary.
No, I mean that's when the fun really starts.
Right.
You're like, you know what? I can start. Screw your web app. I don't want to test that now. I've got access to
pop a shell.
Yeah, I want to pop a shell. Start git clone. I don't know. Do everything. Start Metasploiting the hell out of it, and then like that's when it really goes bad. Imagine if somebody just connected to your We'll retract that. When you make a website, you've given it permissions, blah blah blah. Maybe you've connected it to your domain internally. I don't know. Who knows? We don't know, but people do. And if I can get a shell on that, I've got a domain box on your network. Yeah. I've got a domain machine, and I can start running commands in your network when I shouldn't be allowed. Yeah. Go very bad very, very quickly.
And this is, I mean, I'm going to go on a tangent here a bit, but this is why I've had a passion for IoT security for a long time, in particular with my day job at Screenly. Like, IoT devices are deemed kind of unsecure, like because they don't really need to be secure. But what a lot of people fail to understand is if I can pop that IoT device, I can use that to move lateral on the network, just like if you pop a shell on that server, right?
Yeah. I mean, we hear about like IoT stuff, don't we? And that's why everyone says like put it in a DMZ, put it in a different VLAN, like segregate it off.
Yeah.
Like if it could get popped, let's not make it the worst. I mean, we heard about years ago the casino in
the aquarium one.
Tank.
Yeah.
Like, that was awesome. Like,
yeah. Let's recap that story. Somebody, that was a Bluetooth exploit, I think.
Yeah, it was somebody basically hacked it. It was like a smart fish tank.
Yeah.
And somebody hacked the fish tank, but then it was like, if I remember correctly, it's been years, but I read it. It was connected to the corp domain for some reason, I don't know, because people like to monitor their fish tanks from the corp domain. I don't know why. Why would you? So by hacking the IoT device or the fish tank, you had corp hack. And then, well, that was it. The casino was hacked. It was done.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, that was that was many years.
Yeah.
But it all depends on what you see on a web app. I mean, I've seen a web app once where you could send an email basically when like almost like a confirmation email. It was a few years ago, and it was all like I make an account or I've uploaded something, and it was like a confirmation email. Like, good, we see that all the time. The issue is the confirmation email was generated on client that I had control on.
Oh,
and it was like just almost sent to the server that was then pinged.
It's shelling out to like mail.
Right. Yeah. So I was like, well, what happens if I change that? And I'll just send an email and just whatever, and I'll just type it. I was like, oh, it worked. And I just got my own email from them. I was like, well, that's a great phishing account.
Right.
I can just send emails as them and go, oh, your account has been locked. You need to click this link to unlock it. And it's coming from them. So it's all legit. It's all trusted. It's all good. And then people could just click those links. I mean, I didn't. The bad guy. But like, people would probably just click those links because it's trusted, and then I'll just start hoovering up all their clients and information and password, whatever else.
Right.
But it all depends on what the web apps do.
Right.
That's where that's why I like to completely map out website first and go, let me see all the functionality. And then I'm going to sniff something that's bad, like an email being like a file up that isn't.
Yeah. And I guess that brings us into the other category of like the most common vulnerabilities, which is like injection attacks or SQL injection attacks, depending on the target, right?
Yes. So SQL injection attack, they've been donkeys before I was even a pen.
Right.
And it's the oldest form of attack is like all 1 equals 1, the classic. So when you go, okay, I'm going to send, imagine a login, got a username, and it sends it to the back end. Cool. And the idea is, I'm trying to make people visualize this. It's quite weird. Is imagine that's been put into a SQL, and it was like select user or username from users list where password equals. And what happens if I could just screw with that and inject my own thing? Instead of saying it will say all 1 equals 1, which will return a true. 1 does equal. You know? So if you can make it return a true, because that's what you're looking for in order to log in. It'd be like, yeah, login password equals correct, blah, true, yeah, login, good to go. If I can just go, well, 1 equals 1, it'd be like, yeah, it does, true, yeah. We're like, wow, cool, I'm going to log in because I got my.
Right.
And
or you could do more nasty things.
You could do a lot more nasty things. Yeah, you could dump the entire database at that point instead of just logging in. But it'd be like, okay, or Bobby drop tables, and just like delete delete the entire database because some people they just want to see the world burned. And
what's the craziest one you've seen with regards to these? Like, what's the craziest? Like you mentioned the mail story already with that. What's the craziest finding you've had where you're like, really?
Yeah, I had one of my first web apps, right? And this was way back when, before I didn't really know what I was doing. I was still learning. I was on a job with a good mate of mine. I won't say his name. I don't know whether he wants me. He'll know if he hears. There was a web app, and there was a page which we found which you could generate your own report, right? And it was all like it was to do with like
Right.
deal with. But before you generate the report, it gave you the option to put your own generation code into it, to say like, oh, I want to use this code as well as generate my. And it was in C#, and I don't quite understand the logic of them letting you put any C# you wanted into a web app and it would just render it. I don't quite understand, but effectively we just got a Metasploit, a Meterpreter shell. We were like, well, we're just going to put bad C# on that, and then just got a beacon back, and we're like, well, now we've popped your web. Why did you have that page? Why was that there?
Right.
And it was just more confusing than anything. We've also had a website where they didn't hide the .git directory, so which
Okay.
I don't know why that would ever be a thing.
Why would it even be in the first place is the biggest question, but yes.
Well, would it still be there? Basically, they hosted their website, and it's still within the directory of the website. It wasn't like linked anywhere, but you can find it. If you go to the website /.git, and then it just listed all the Git files, and it was all the source code for the website. I'm like, well, that's not good, because there was like hard-coded credentials. There was like information in like internal direct like networking information. They were like,
so you can literally clone their website by just putting.
Oh yeah, I just Git cloned the entire website. I was like, I'm just gonna host your website. Yeah, I'm like, this is not a good thing, guys. So it was like instantly on the phone to the client going,
right,
take this offline now, like,
right.
Because you're like, yeah, this shouldn't be there, and if anyone finds this, you're going to be in a bad way.
Right. I mean, yeah, if they also had hardcore credentials, like you have multiple levels of no-nos there.
Yeah, exactly. There were so many bad things. It was like the perfect storm. I had a great day, and
right.
I had a really fun day, but the client not so. But that's the point of being a pen tester. If I'm happy, the client usually isn't.
Right.
You're always the bad guy. But yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right, so we talked a bit about Burp Suite, and obviously that's kind of like the go-to tool for a lot of like early stage recon, I guess, for any pen test engagement. You alluded to Metasploit, which is another very common tool for using in these engagements. You want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, happily. So Metasploit is, I think, imagine you found something that's old. We talked about WordPress being like outdated. I mean, everything can be outdated, can't it? So a Metasploit is effectively a framework for going, I have an exploit, I'm going to say, oh, it's this IP address, this vulnerable, I want this, and it will fire it. It's a framework for firing exploits at, or different tools at things. So like, you can proxy, if you get a shell on a box, you can hop through that box.
So lateral movement on the network.
Yeah, lateral movement. So sometimes, like if you've got a web app, talk about web app. I know. So if I popped a website and I've got a shell on the website, and I'm like, cool, happy days. What's further on from? So I want to use this website as like a stepping stone to start attacking more things. Sometimes you haven't got the tools on. You can't just install exploits and stuff on that box. It might be tiny. It might be like have AV on it, stuff like that. But maybe you can use that box as like a stepping proxy, and that's where like Metasploit can come in handy. There are other tools that can do it, quite handy. You can go, okay, I'm going to pop it, and now I'm going to funnel all my traffic through that. All my traffic from my box is going to proxy through the website. And then I'm going to start going, oh, well, what's on the other side of the website? Oh, it's your domain controller. Happy days. Let's start attacking that. It's because people don't have the domain controller online. People do. You shouldn't. So maybe it's hidden behind something, and maybe I can just hack something before I get to it.
So let's unpack that a bit. So let's imagine that this example web app that we're talking about, you managed to pop a shell one way or another, and now you have abilities to execute, but it might be like a pre-locked down Docker container, or if it's a modern thing. So like you have nothing in there, right? You might have write access to say like that /tmp folder, but that's all you got, right? Because that's kind of hard to run a system without anything that's writable.
Yes, yeah, you have to be able to write to it somewhere, or at least be able to load something into memory. Or
Right.
Docker can be a different beast. Breaking out of Docker, it can be done, but like it's getting harder. If you've mounted like docker.sock or something like that,
Wow.
inside,
Let's assume people are not crazy.
let's assume I've seen crazy people. Yeah, they exist. But yeah, like it's usually you've made a mistake. If you've done everything to guidelines and everything like that, now don't get me wrong, people are wrong, right? Guidelines aren't always correct, but generally they're the best thing you can do.
Right.
So if you follow the guidelines for Docker, you shouldn't mount docker.sock, because that's
convenience is usually the reason why people do things like that.
Right? Yeah, it's usually a dev going, "Oh, I can't be bothered to drop out of this and mount this. I'm just going to mount it in here," and then he forgets to unmount it, because people do. They're like, "Oh, I'm working till 8 at night," and I'm going, "Oh God, my wife calls me in for dinner," and suddenly you've got a massive vulnerability in your system.
Yeah,
it happens all the time, and that's where pen wrecks you.
Yeah.
So,
but you one way or another, you are now in access of some kind of shell in a VM or Docker container where you can write and execute commands. Like, what do you do now? Like, what do you start with your network discovery to like lateral movements?
Well, first question: am I trying not to get caught?
Right.
Yeah. So there are a few things. Like, if you're on a red team, for example, and that's basically a pen tester that doesn't want, and they're doing everything very sneakily, then there are ways of doing it, and they're very, very light and live off them. If you're just a pen tester and you're on an assessment, then you can fire all the lasers and don't have to worry about the sock. So at that point,
let's assume there's no IDS in place, right? So
So if there's no one going to catch me, if I don't have to worry about being caught, I'd fire off like Nmap,
right,
or Nessus if you really want.
Oh, right, that's a blast from the past.
Yeah, well, it's still pretty well, I say good. It's useful, but like, yeah, you start firing off discovery scans across the net, and what Nmap does is like network Nmap. You can just go, okay, I'm going to give you a range of IP addresses and give it /8 if you want. Take a while, but you can give it the biggest range, and it will start poking all of those IP addresses and seeing what's like. Or it will start pinging all those IP addresses, see if they're there, or go, oh, is there a web server on this IP? No. And then when it finds something, it will start going, identifying what that is. If it finds a web server, it'll be like, oh, this is an Nginx version blah web server, or this, 445 is open. This is, Windows 10 or whatever. And it will start identifying what you can get a layout of.
And then, based on that finding, you redirect your lasers obviously towards the interesting targets.
Yeah, hackers are lazy. I hate to say it. We're pretty lazy. Like, if there's an XP box on your network, we're going to hack that first, because
well, first of all, you shouldn't have that in the first place. But yes,
you absolutely shouldn't have that. But there are councils still out there running it, I guarantee you.
I do not doubt that.
Yeah. So there are networks out there that still have very old stuff. Like, I have seen NT in use, and I've been pen testing for 7 years, way after NT4 was end of life, and I've seen it.
Well, Windows 10 is end of life
Windows
now, which is yeah.
So it's like you see all these things everywhere. So never assume that something like XP isn't going to be there, and as soon as it is on the network, happy days, because it's so much.
And now the game is to get a persistent shell of sorts, I would imagine, is your next step.
Yeah. So there's one thing like getting on a network, and there's another thing staying.
Yeah.
So if you can pop a website and you get your shell on that server, who knows when that's going to be found? Who knows when that's going to be turned off? Who knows when they go, maybe the SOC's watching, go, fuck, like we've been done. Let's turn off the website, and you've lost all your access. So as soon as you get on there, you want and you want your beacon going out to your like C2, like command and control center, and like, okay, I'm gonna get another way in, another time. Then if all hell breaks loose and I lose access, I've not lost that.
Yeah, because we've seen quite a few stories in the press. They're obviously spun from a marketing angle, but if you read between the lines, you can say that they were definitely in some big company. I mean, this is like the origin story for Zero Trust at Google, right? They find state-sponsored attackers inside their network sniffing traffic, and like this is like what 2005 probably, right? But they had persistent access to Google data inside the network, right? And this is when Zero Trust started. But the point is, like if you're now on the network, many, if not most, systems would not do encryption of the traffic going through that network internally.
No, an awful lot of them don't. There are things that do, like HTTPS and
but your database connections, even like the session connections to your database, like you might sniff the root password for database there.
You can just sit on the network and start sniffing because something is going to be clear text. Or you can use tools like Responder. Like so, Responder, when you say like mount a, say everyone's got like mounted shares on. When you boot up your machine, like obviously it reconnects. There's a connection,
right?
And what Responder will do is almost like hear that and go, well, you don't want to connect to that. You want to, what about this? And basically, long and short of it, you end up with a hash, and a hash is basically your encrypted password, and you can just sit on the network. You don't need to connect to it. And just start sniffing these hashes, and then you can just try and crack the password. Now, if you've set a good password, that's not really an issue unless you've got. Well, no, it is because you can have older versions of like relay and you sometimes don't even. It does have a sniff. There are so many things you can do if you're just on a network. Like,
right.
It's what I'm trying to say. Like it's a rabbit hole of just carnage that gets on your network, because I guarantee there will be someone that's shared a drive somewhere they should, or there'll be a text document on a desktop saying passwords for DA. There'll be a box that nobody knows about because Brenda wanted to use her laptop because that's one that she's got all her Google tabs on or something.
Right.
And there are so many things that in an organization that go wrong.
Yeah. I mean, that's at Screenly, one of the rule of thumbs we've had. We have had two rule of thumbs, really. Is no Windows machines for anybody. That's the quickest one. Yeah, that's the quickest rule.
Is it all Mac or something?
Mac or Linux or Chrome OS. Like those are the only things I trust. I do not trust any Windows boxes at all. You can secure them. You can secure them, but it's a lot more effort, right?
Yes. It's because everyone uses them, right? There's a lot more effort putting into breaking.
Well, that's part of it, but also the security boundaries were a lot weaker to start with, I think.
No, there's a lot more you can do on a Windows box. Like hacking a Mac, I've never hacked a
not to say it's not possible, but it's a lot more challenging.
Yeah, that's it. Nothing's impossible. Like Pentest, nothing is. It's just how much effort you want to put in and how much time you have.
Right, and also like who's your attack. I mean, it's if you are up against a state-sponsored attacker, it's game over, right? Like
they've got.
They're gonna pop a 0 day that you have no idea even exist.
Yeah, they find O days for that, like every day. Like I know people that just drop O days every week, which is terrifying. And some of them are like terrifying. They get reported eventually and then get fixed.
Yeah,
like that. But like if the private sector could do it, then absolutely state, and they won't disclose it because why would?
Yeah. And I mean, this happens on both sides of the pond, to be fair. It's not only China and North Korea. NSA sits on a lot of 0 days too.
Oh, God, yeah. As do we, like the UK.
Yes.
Like all the 4-letter agencies around the world have got a little bank of 0 days, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Because why would they disclose them? They're free ticket. If they want to hack something,
Yeah.
going to get in because it's not going to get found,
Yeah.
and because obviously there's no signatures for it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They'd be careful when they use them. No, they don't
Yeah. You don't want to burn them.
You don't want to burn them. There, there's a lot of effort that goes into finding those.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if a state-sponsored actor is on your network, then imagine they've got infinite time and infinite budget and infinite capability because they have the budget to understand them. So the idea is,
yeah, and you mentioned like you might get hashes from traffic you sniffed, right? And then if they sit on a $5 million GPU cluster and just point hashcat or whatever the tool is today.
Yeah, maybe their target isn't just wrecking you because you've got some really good stuff, like we say, like a huge password cracking rig or something, and they're just going to mine Bitcoin through you,
right?
And just earn a ridiculous amount of money. Maybe they're hosted in Czech Republic, apparently, like capital gains tax anymore. So, so who knows?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we covered that. We covered Nmap, and then I guess one tool that we kind of need to cover as well is kind of the go-to platform for everybody who's doing any kind of security work is Kali, right? That's what most people run on, right? Maybe say a few words about Kali, what it is, and yeah.
Yeah, so Kali is effectively an operator, right? It's Linux based, and it's preloaded with an awful lot of, like many of them you will probably never use, but many of them, like we spoke about Nmap and Metasploit and Burp Suite, they're all preloaded. The Burp Suite, the free version, isn't quite as good, but it is there, and you can just download that VM. It's free. There's no licensing needed. You don't need to be trained to use it, which is terrifying because like a little 10-year-old kid can download it as I can without any of the know-how about the damage that that operating system.
Yeah, and it's so that's why you're running on your laptop normally when you do engagements.
Yeah, that's it. So I like to run it in a virtual machine. So generally, I can't say it's for every pen, but every pen test that I know has a Windows base, and then everything runs in virtual machines like VMware. The main priorities with that, you can start isolating stuff and snapshot and everything like that. So like, because stuff breaks, right? And maybe you've got client data, you start rolling back to snapshot. But yeah, I have it on my laptop. I'm staring at it right now. There it is, and it's a very useful tool. It's a very useful thing to have because you can run anything on it. Generally, there are some things that it's around Windows, but a lot of things to run better on Kali or are built around because everyone uses it.
Yeah, it has the audience, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So, would you mind if we go through a bit of like a show and tell of like how your environment looks like? Like we talk about Burp Suite and like just see how these like tools actually look like when you're working with them.
Okay. Right. Let's make sure I'm not going to share anything client data wise.
That is a good that's a good call.
So right. So this is Kali. Now you can use like GUIs and stuff like that to run stuff. I don't like it, and a lot of tools are made without a GUI.
Yeah.
So for example, like Nmap, you can start running Nmap against certain things. So let's do. Right, what can we Nmap? Right, this. What to Nmap without? Let's have a look. So I'm going to search for port 22. So it's SSH, right?
Yep.
On my route. That's my router. I know it's there. If anyone gets access to where I live, that's my VLAN. Doesn't matter because I'll probably
not hard to find once you actually have access to it.
I'll probably be home and I'll shortly kick you out. So stop it.
That's actually a good question. Sorry to derail you. What's your network of choice? How have you designed your home network to make sure that everything is yes?
So because I have a wife and she doesn't like the network going down or crazy amount of traffic I put over it and impacting Netflix and stuff like that. I run two VLANs,
Right.
my home VLAN and my work VLAN, and
Right.
never the twain, because just mainly for usability, less about security. It's more the fact I want to keep it all separate. I've got a lot of things in this office that need network connectivity, and it's nice to keep it all separate. To know everything in this subnet is my work, and the only way to get into my office, plug in. There's no Wi-Fi.
And what gear do you trust?
I have an open WRT router that I flashed myself, and then I screwed around with the firewall. But yeah, it's things like Linksys hardware. Upgrade. It's showing, but it's custom firmware. Just because I like to tinker, I could have left it stock, but as a pen tester, you never generally leave anything.
No.
If you can tinker. But yeah, so like this, I'm not going to do a full sweep of my network because I can't remember what's on it, and and don't want to just give everything away.
Fair enough.
But generally, if you've got Nmap, you go, okay, right, I'm going to start searching the network, and you would, instead of putting that, for example, if I'm on that subnet, you could do the network. Now, I'm not going to click enter because I don't want to. But but you can just start searching the network. You don't have to give it a port either. So I give it port 22, which is SSH. But you can just search for all the ports. But
it's also I guess it should be said that there are these port scanning tools now that you can scan like the entire IPv4 internet space in like hours, right? Which is crazy.
Absolutely. Like I could scan this entire subnet on every port in like 5 minutes.
Well, you could probably do it even faster. Like, I mean, they're like,
probably. I was being conservative more than anything.
Yeah.
It's like there are like per IP address there's a total like 65,000 ports, and a port, so like a website will run on port 80 or 440. Yeah. And they're just what the port, and then like 22 will be SSH. Different things run on different. Yeah. And you can have 65,000 of them per IP. And what this tool will do, go, I'm going to test each IP address, and then also test each 65,000 ports for each IP address. So there's a lot of scanning goes on. And if you're monitoring the network, you can imagine the sheer amount of traffic. Which is why my first question, like if I'm on the network, am I trying not to? Right. Because if I'm trying not to get caught, I certainly wouldn't do this.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Get found.
Yeah. Completely interesting, different tangent, but I saw a really interesting tweet the other day about how you sniff traffic between two switches by just connecting a hub between the two switches, and then you break all the switch functionality essentially, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's why hubs aren't on sale anymore. Well, they should be. Like hubs used to be like the go-to.
Right.
Like with a hub, like if one thing gets sent in from one port, it gets sent out at all ports.
Right, everything's broadcasted.
Everything is sent out for everyone. So you just tap into that and just hear everything.
Yeah.
Whereas like a switch, obviously, you'll go in like port A and be like, I'm destined to go out of port F, and it'll only go out port F.
Yeah.
Unless you've got, you've got a trunk port or something. With that. People do. Fine.
Yeah, maybe it bleeds into the next episode, but I just thought it was an interesting way of like if you just attach a hub between two switches, you can just like sniff all the traffic.
I definitely we'll go over that next episode. I definitely just sniffed it, or like pop their access control system to dump everyone's cards. Yeah,
right.
I digress.
Right, that's cool. All right, so Nmap here, you got the go-to here, and then Metasploit's next.
Let's see if this is. What do you mean Metasploit? Oh, right. The console. Absolute moron. That was a noob move. The command isn't Metasploit. It's because we were saying it. That's what it was. So Metasploit framework console. So if you a nice little bit of ASCII. Sometimes it's not, but So you see on this thing, I need to update it, but there's currently in this one instance, there's 2,408 exploits, 1,240 auxiliaries. So an auxiliary would be like, I'm going to get all the information of all your Windows boxes, for example, poke each of the SMB ports and pull back what version of that would be. Instead of an exploit, that would be just using Windows functionality.
Right.
It'd be like a scanner slash.
Right.
Like, okay, I want to know, oh, your Windows 10 or your Windows 11, but that would be what that.
Right.
And then there's obviously payloads of like, okay, I want to drop an interpreter payload, for example. It's like a shell that runs on the box and will let you do a lot in that box. Mini framework that you on box and run lots. But then you can just search for, say, like SSH. So imagine I was on. You can get the port back for that, the version back for that by giving this a few extra tags like -v or -s. Then you would know the version of SSH. But say you just search SSH, and for example, say it's vulnerable, no matter what. But say I know because I found the version of SSH you're using. I'm on your network, and you're using version 1.8. Then I can just search this, and I Google the hell out of it. And I know this is vulnerable, or I've loaded my own exploit. This is a very easy way of doing it. There are better ways of doing it, but generally this is what it's for.
Yeah. Can you search by version as well?
Yes, yeah. You can put loads more things in it. So yeah, whatever. So like this, it's on SSH 1.5. You can. There are lots of things you can search. Google is your friend with this because a lot of exploits aren't on this. You can load it in. A lot of them are just wrote in Ruby, so you can start loading your own stuff in Metasploit, or you can just use something out of Metasploit, like.
Right.
But then, so let's load up a known one. So we'll search. This one. Remember saying like there's a reason that people don't use on network, because you see this disclosed back in 2008,
right,
a long time ago, guys. All these things that are vulnerable to it. So Windows 2000, 2003, so all these XP boxes, all these 2000.
And SP2 was the last version of XP, if I'm not recalling.
Yeah,
if I recall correctly.
SP3
actually, yeah.
SP3, yeah. So all of them are vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like you can't really do anything about it. So you can use that because you can either type it and use, or you just go. And all you do then is go that. So show options. For example, these are the options for this exploit, and it will just give you stuff like what's the target height, the port it's running on, 5, and then you can just go right. What payload? This is where you do like Windows reverse TCP. So what that means is you can fire something off, exploit it, run it, reverse TCP, fire something back to you to capture the shell. This is where you type in your IP.
Right.
That you just fire that, boom, and you've got a shell on the box. It's quite simple.
Right. Yeah. It's a powerful tool, and particularly if you marry that with things like public data sets like Shodan and these. Now you have.
You only need to go on Shodan and just search for XP box. People that have exposed like 4, 5, or 1, 3 to the internet and stuff like that. You're like, these boxes are like, there's nothing stopping. If it's an XP box and it happens to, for whatever reason, like there are people stupid out there, put SMB on the. Yeah, I can get a shell on that box. There's actually nothing other than my box.
Yeah, I mean, there was I'm sure you remember VNC Roulette when that came out way back when. Do you remember that story? Like
Yeah,
it's like they had like industrial control systems, just like publicly available without any internet connection, without any authentication.
stupid.
Yeah,
People don't think, and then going back to what you said, it's usability. It's usually a dev that wants an easier day, and it's like, oh, I can access this from home. I'll put the internet on it because then I can just configure it from home in my pajamas. Um, and
yeah.
it never gets taken off.
I've heard stories from people who've done security work in like air gapped environments or like industrial control systems where when they did audits, they found like a 4G modem connected to one of the devices because somebody wanted remote access. It's like,
Yep.
You kind of defeats the whole purpose of air gapping this now.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I remember I've done a few air gap networks, and you're always there, and you're like, huh, why can't I resolve 8.8.8.8 on DNS? I'm like,
Right.
that's Google. Why does it resolve? Like, what is? And then you're down a rabbit hole of something's got internet access.
Right.
And then all alarms start. You're like, why is this? Why is this? It's pen testing can be really fun. Obviously, I've been in it a while now, so it's fun. I'll probably yeah, but like, it's a lot of rabbit holes, a lot of googling. Like,
yeah,
it's good fun.
The last thing I want to cover is something that I'm sure has been on your radar lately. Like you already mentioned the idea of being detected, right? That's a big part. And if you have a payload you drop, if you have any level of sophistication on your network, you will have some kind of IDS or some kind of detection system, right?
Yeah.
Which usually works on signature of the payload, right? That's how they detect it. Now, with the state of AI tools today, it must be insanely easy to obfuscate those payloads and you basically have a unique payload for every single attack with very, very low effort.
I think in theory, this is an area of expertise I do not specialize in, so I don't want to sound like I would go to some of my friends and be like, mate, does this work? So, but in theory, I don't understand why you couldn't just obfuscate it or change the signature. But that is an area of expertise I do not have.
Fair enough.
I can't really say whether it's possible or not.
Yeah, it just seemed like an obvious thing to me, at least, but maybe I am wrong about that.
Yeah, it's a lot of things. It sounds like it's going to be like obvious. Yeah, of course. Why can't you use AI to just rewrite it in a different way, or do like maybe it would work? Probably it does. Yeah. But yeah, I can't say for sure because I know the red teams that I know are still worried about burning payloads, and they're like, oh, let's not use this. Let's protect this. And if it was easy just to remake it, then it wouldn't be a problem. Or we would just use loads of exploits and just like anything that currently gets found, you would just whack it through AI.
I suppose it has to do with, I mean, they must have fingerprinting in them somehow, which I presume might be based on the syscalls they make, which I guess are less obfuscatable.
I mean, there's always going to be operations or things that exploit will do that it shouldn't do, like calling out to a random IP address.
Right.
Like if you want a beacon out or like a foothold in a network, it's going to have to call out at some point or open up something at some point, right? Otherwise, you've just made a worm and thing you're never going to have. But that's like in a normal corp network, some random box, maybe like somebody's workstation, calling out to some IP address in Russia. I mean, that looks dodgy regardless of.
Yeah. If you're reaching out to a CNC server in Russia, then
yeah, it's like regardless of what signature that payload's got, or regardless of calling out to that IP address is probably something that you should. And that will get found by like IDS and.
Yeah. All right. So I think we covered a lot of grounds. We covered the basic tools. Have we missed any tools that one should be aware of?
There's so many. It all depends on what you're.
Right.
So like there's old school tools like I haven't. I had a client question me why I didn't use it only to go, and I was like, because it's bad. But like there are tools like that which people see, or like they were big back in the day, but not. And that's Nikto's like just fire a web app, but the information it gives you. No, I don't think. I think the run of the mill things I feel with anything else.
And I'm also curious about your thoughts on the automated pen testing tools we've seen. There's been a rise of these in the last 5-10 years. How good are they today from your vantage?
My opinion, because I want to keep my job, they're rubbish. Don't use them. But I don't think you'll ever beat a person. I don't think you'll ever beat the mindset of an attacker that wants to, like the persistence of a person that really wants to get in your network. A machine will never beat.
No, but it probably can cover like common like cross-site scripting attacks.
Oh, absolutely. But then there might be a payload that a person will get through. A cross-site scripting attack is quite easy to protect against. You just have input filtering and output. Like run of the mill, you're basically fine then. And a machine can find that quite easily. But it doesn't mean your website's. If you've got like low budget, for example, like you're a small firm, and you know what, pen testing is bloody expensive. Like if you're looking at $1,000 a day per person, like it's not cheap. An automated AI tool is probably good for you. Like it'll probably give you a lot of value. But I hope it doesn't replace my job. I mean, what I usually do in my like all the stuff behind me, a computer can't do that.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. You're safe.
I think.
All right. So, if somebody wants to get started, two questions really. The first one is, what advice would you give to yourself, like if you were just getting into this world of pen testing? Like, where would you start?
Read a lot, lots of things on YouTube. How I got started, I can't give like how everyone gets started, because there are pen testing worlds full of everything. And there are people that go through the uni route. There are people that go through like, I just hack things in my spare time route.
Right.
People that break the law. How I got into it was I downloaded a lot of virtual machines off Vulnerabilities, which is a website, and you could download the virtual machines, and they're all vulnerable, and they all teach you different. I downloaded one that was a website that was really bad. It's a website like that. Never give up learning. The reason that a lot of us are in this industry is because there's too much to learn, and there's always new stuff. I think my word of advice is enjoy learning, enjoy discovering new things. Like just learn as well.
Do you have any recommendations for? I'm not a fan of certificates, but in terms of some people prefer structured learning, offensive security is one of the big ones.
Yeah, like OSCP is offensive security is one. If you want to go like red teaming route, like Rasta Mouse's CRTO is really good. If you want to like be check, for example, you want to work with like government stuff, you check red. So like team member or CRT and stuff like that. There are so many certs. A cert doesn't necessarily make you a good pen tester. It just means they can sell you on things, you know.
Yeah,
it makes you more attractive to an employer.
I'm not a fan of certificates in general, but I do understand that if you're new to a field, having some guardrails can be helpful to understand where you should at least focus on.
Oh, absolutely. If you're coming into this field, if you're new, absolutely certs are 100%. It will encourage employers to look at you more favorably, and you'll warrant, which is always good. But for example, my certs have lapsed. Like I let my certs lapse a few years ago, and I haven't bothered anymore because I'm already in the industry. And once you get to the point of having years of experience, certs mean less and less. Depend on what you want to do.
Yeah.
If you want to go down a very certain route, a cert will help you. If you want to get like CSAS because you want to do regulatory red team work, you need a cert because you need that. But
fair enough. Last question. Favorite CV or exploit of all times?
Favorite CV or exploit? I mean, my favorite would have to be something to do with access, but
Right.
My personal favorite. Do you want personal favorite? Yeah,
Yes.
is there's an exploit for a Paxton control system where you could poke the SQL database, or like it was basically you poke that port and it gives you like a timestamp back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it says like this. You could then at a time, I'm not going to say what the latest, but you could concatenate that with the word elephant, and then send it back, and it would then send you back a SQL connection string, and then you can connect to the SQL database and then dump all the access. That's my personal favorite because I just find that hilarious that they won't use the word elephants, but that's
that's a good exploit. I think that's a really good note to end on. So thanks so much, Warren. Really appreciate this. We will be scheduling another episode where we're going to do fiscal pen testing, which is kind of like your red team hat.
Yeah, that's what I do. That's what I specialize.
That's going to be a lot of fun. Again, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Talk soon. Cheers.
Yeah, we'll see you, mate. Yeah.